The United States spent years punishing Mali with sanctions and visa bans. Now American officials are flying to Bamako, asking for cooperation. The same military leaders Washington called illegitimate are suddenly being called partners. That means something changed, and it was not Mali. By the end of this, you will understand why the United States walked away from the Sahel, why that was a mistake, and why they are now trying to come back. In August of 2020, Mali's military removed President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita from power. The response from Washington was immediate and harsh. Sanctions were imposed. Military aid was cut. Visa restrictions were placed on officials. The message could not have been clearer. This government is not legitimate. There will be no dialogue. There will be no partnership. You will be brought to heel. Then, in May of 2021, the same military leaders carried out a second coup. This time, they detained the civilian transition officials who were supposed to be leading the country back to democracy. Washington's response was even stronger. All security assistance that had been continuing under special legal exceptions was suspended. Officials announced they would consider targeted measures against the political and military leaders who blocked the democratic transition. The United States made it clear that Mali was now on the outside. Burkina Faso followed the same path in January of 2022. Another coup, another military government, another round of American condemnation. Niger fell in July of 2023. 3 countries in the Sahel, all governed by soldiers who took power by force, all facing the same punishment from the West. The language Washington used to describe these governments was sharp and dismissive. They were called transitional authorities, military regimes, illegitimate actors, not governments, not equals, just obstacles that needed to be managed until civilian rule could be restored. The assumption driving American policy was simple and confident. Isolation works. Economic pressure works. Eventually, these military leaders will crack under the weight of sanctions and international rejection. They will have no choice but to hold elections and hand power to civilians. Western officials insisted on strict timelines for democratic transitions. They used regional bodies to enforce compliance. They warned African leaders that partnering with military governments would come with consequences. For nearly 3 years, the strategy was clear. No engagement, no cooperation, no quarter given until democracy returned. But while Washington was refusing to talk, something else was happening on the ground in Mali. In August of 2022, French troops completed their withdrawal from the country. Operation Barkhane, the decade-long counter-terrorism mission that Paris had positioned as essential to Sahel security, ended with military convoys driving north through the desert. The last French soldiers left Mali, not because their mission was complete, but because they had been ordered out. Mali's government had told them to leave, and France had no choice but to go. That same year, European Union training missions were suspended. UN peacekeeping forces began their drawdown. By 2023, the entire Western security architecture that had been built in the Sahel over a decade was collapsing. Bases were being handed over. Equipment was being packed up. Intelligence networks were going dark. The United States and its allies were losing access to one of the most strategically important regions in Africa, and into that vacuum stepped Russia. In December of 2021, members of the Wagner Group, a Russian private military company with close ties to the Kremlin, arrived in Mali. They came with attack helicopters, weapons, and the promise of results. No lectures about democracy, no conditions about human rights, just security services in exchange for access. The Malian government reportedly paid around $10 million a month for Wagner's presence, and while that price was high, it came without the political strings that Western partnerships demanded. Wagner fighters deployed to central Mali. They operated alongside Malian forces in counter-terrorism operations. They took over bases that French troops had vacated. By 2024, Wagner had between 1,000 and 2,000 personnel in the country. Then in 2025, after Wagner's leader died and the group was restructured under Russian state control, those forces were rebranded as Africa Corps. Same personnel, same mission, just a different name and tighter control from Moscow. The Russian presence was not limited to security. Mining companies with links to Russian interests began exploring Mali's gold reserves. Diplomatic ties deepened. Mali's military leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, traveled to Moscow and was received by Vladimir Putin. What had started as a security transaction was becoming a strategic partnership, and it was not just Mali. Burkina Faso brought in Russian trainers. Niger signed agreements with Moscow, even as it ordered American troops to leave. The 3 countries formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a mutual defense pact that excluded Western partners entirely. They withdrew from ECOWAS, the regional body that had imposed sanctions on them. They coordinated their foreign policies, and they made it clear that their future partnerships would not include Paris or Washington unless the terms changed dramatically. For the United States, this was a nightmare scenario. The Sahel is not a peripheral region. It sits at the crossroads of North and West Africa. It is a corridor for migration, trade, and armed groups. Terrorist organizations linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS operate across its borders. Losing access to the Sahel meant losing intelligence. It meant losing the ability to conduct counter-terrorism operations. It meant ceding ground to Russia and watching China expand its economic influence unchecked. And then there were the minerals. Mali is Africa's third-largest gold producer. The country has an estimated 800 tons of gold deposits, 5,000 tons of uranium, 4 million tons of lithium, and 20 million tons of manganese. Niger holds some of the world's highest-grade uranium reserves and supplies a significant portion of the European Union's uranium imports. Burkina Faso is one of the continent's top gold producers with copper, zinc, and phosphate reserves. These are not just valuable commodities, they are strategic resources essential for nuclear energy, electric vehicle batteries, and renewable energy infrastructure. And Western companies were being pushed out. In 2024, Niger revoked the operating license of Orano, the French state-owned uranium company, and took control of major mining operations. Mali nationalized gold mines that had been operated by South African and Canadian companies. Burkina Faso expropriated British mining operations. The message from the Alliance of Sahel states was clear. Foreign companies would no longer extract wealth on terms set in Paris or London. If they wanted access, they would have to accept state ownership, higher taxes, and local processing requirements. China moved in quickly. In December of 2024, a Chinese state-owned company opened the Goulamina lithium mine in southern Mali. The project is one of the largest lithium operations in Africa. Mali holds 30% of the shares. Local investors hold another 5%. The Chinese company controls 65%, but it operates under Mali's new mining laws, which require national participation in strategic projects. Over the next 2 decades, the mine is expected to produce 500,000 tons of lithium concentrate annually. That is lithium that will power Chinese electric vehicles and batteries, not American ones. Russia also secured mining concessions. Gold operations with Russian backing expanded in Mali and Burkina Faso. Uranium negotiations between Niger and Moscow intensified. The strategic resources that had once flowed primarily to Europe and the United States were being redirected, and the West was watching its leverage evaporate in real time. By mid-2025, the costs of isolation had become impossible to ignore. Terrorist attacks in the Sahel were not decreasing, they were intensifying. In September of 2024, jihadists linked to Al-Qaeda launched a brazen assault on Bamako's main airport, the very base where Russian paramilitaries were stationed. Hundreds were killed or wounded. The attack exposed just how fragile security remained, even with Russian support. But it also demonstrated that Mali's problems were not going away, and that instability in the Sahel threatened American interests, whether Washington engaged or not. Then, in February of 2025, something remarkable happened. United States Africa Command conducted its first military-to-military engagement with Mali in 5 years. American military legal advisors traveled to Bamako and met with their Malian counterparts. The discussions focused on military justice, the law of armed conflict, and the protection of civilians. It was framed as a technical exchange, not a political gesture, but everyone understood what it represented. The United States was testing the waters. In July of 2025, Will Stevens, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and the top American diplomat for West Africa, met with Malian officials in Bamako. In August, congressional delegations from both the House and Senate visited Mali. In September, the Washington Post revealed that the United States had quietly opened counterterrorism talks with Mali's governing junta. And in November, Christopher Landau, the Deputy Secretary of State, publicly praised Mali's armed forces in their fight against jihadists and called for greater cooperation. This was a complete reversal. The same officials who had condemned Mali's military government, who had suspended aid and imposed sanctions, were now commending their security efforts and calling them partners. The shift was so abrupt that it stunned observers across Africa. What had changed? Not Mali's government, not its human rights record, not its commitment to democracy, What changed was Washington's calculation of costs. The United States had tried isolation. It had tried sanctions. It had tried using regional pressure and threatening consequences, and none of it had worked. Mali did not collapse. It did not beg for American support. Instead, it found other partners. It secured Russian military assistance. It signed mining deals with China. It built alliances with Burkina Faso and Niger that excluded Western influence. And in doing so, it demonstrated that American leverage in the Sahel was not as strong as Washington had believed. The return is not about principles. It is about interests. The United States cannot afford to lose the Sahel entirely to Russia and China. It cannot afford to be locked out of counterterrorism operations in a region where armed groups are gaining strength. It cannot afford to watch strategic minerals flow exclusively to Beijing while American industries struggle to secure lithium and uranium for their own supply chains. So the tone has softened, the language has changed. The demands for immediate democratic transitions have been quietly set aside. This is what leverage looks like when it runs out. When the country you tried to punish finds alternatives. When the isolation you impose becomes more costly to you than to them. When the partners you dismissed realize they do not need you as much as you need them. For Mali and the alliance of Sahel states, this moment is instructive. It shows that sovereignty is not granted. It is claimed. That economic independence requires the willingness to walk away from unfavorable terms, even when the cost is high. That partnerships built on mutual interest are more durable than partnerships built on dependency. It shows that when African countries coordinate, when they control their own resources, when they refuse to accept relationships where one side dominates, the global powers who once dictated terms are forced to come back and negotiate. But it also raises uncomfortable questions. Will this American re-engagement be different? Will it be built on respect and mutual benefit, or will it revert to the same paternalistic patterns once Washington feels it has regained a foothold? Will the Sahel states accept American partnership on new terms, or will they keep their distance? Skeptical that Washington's interests have truly aligned with their own. What is certain is that the era of automatic Western dominance in the Sahel is over. The countries that were dismissed as illegitimate, that were punished and isolated, have proven that they can survive without Washington's approval. And that reality is forcing the United States to return not as a savior, but as a supplicant, asking for cooperation, offering partnership, hoping to rebuild what isolation destroyed. The lesson is not just for the Sahel. It is for every African country watching this unfold. Leverage is not permanent, and sometimes the greatest power lies in the willingness to say no.